Well, good morning again. Welcome to Pathfinder, where we talk about what we're all about here in this house. Now, if you come here often, you know a little bit about me and my story and my journey. If you're newer, maybe you don't know much about me. You probably don't know anything about me. I would just like, before I get into this, to share with you a little bit about me and a little bit about my journey. For starters, I was born in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Yeah. Should be more than that, but I'll accept it. Born in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I've got two sisters. I've got two parents, still married to each other. In fact, they're in town visiting this weekend. They were here last night. Today's my dad's birthday. So that's part of my family story. I grew up in the same public school system that my parents went to, that my grandparents went to, that my great-grandparents worked at. That's how deep my roots were in that community. And then my junior year of high school, life kind of took a different turn, and I transferred to a Christian high school. I attended Lutheran Westland in the Detroit area, and I graduated there, fulfilled my dream of graduating valedictorian of my class. Right? You're like, how on earth? That can't possibly be true. I went on from there. I went to the University of Michigan, where I got my degree in aerospace engineering. After that, age 27, I flew my first flight into low Earth orbit. Let me tell you, that was thrilling. I married my wife shortly after that. We started a family. At age 34, this was the pinnacle of my life. I got to participate in the Space Shuttle Discovery's final mission, which had been a lifelong goal of mine. And for the last decade of my life, I've lived in relative fame, wealth, enjoying my extraordinary life. Except this isn't how it actually went, which is why some people are laughing. They're not just mean. This is how my 12-year-old self thought it would go. This was my life map. This was my plan. And yet, this isn't how it turned out for me. The first few things were actually true. I actually did graduate valedictorian. That wasn't a lie. The rest of it was. But the rest of my life kind of took a different approach. Instead of University of Michigan, I made a left turn into another very small college in Ann Arbor, Michigan, called Concordia. It was then college, now university in Ann Arbor. Instead of being a Wolverine, I got to be a Cardinal, which I know is a big deal here in St. Louis. It was kind of disappointing, in Ann Arbor, to go from being a Wolverine to a Cardinal. I mean, come on. I graduated there from Concordia with a degree in sociology and communications. Not at all what I thought I would study. I did, in fact, meet my wife in college. We got married. We started a family. We've got 3 amazing kids, and that's been just a bright spot in my life. At age 27, I didn't fly into low Earth orbit. At age 27, I was graduating from Concordia Seminary in St. Louis, here in Clayton. So at age 27, I'd got my first full-time job. It's a late bloomer, I guess. Spent a lot of time in school. But again, I never thought I would go to seminary and become a pastor, and I started my work as a pastor at age 27. At age 34, I did not fly in the Space Shuttle Discovery, but I did watch that final mission on TV. Which means I never fulfilled so many of my dreams to become a pilot. I never got my pilot's license. I never flew into space. But I'll tell you what, in 26 years of driving, I have managed to successfully keep my driver's license, which I'm proud about. And if you've seen me drive, you would understand why I'm proud about that. God is surely with me. And so for the last decade since then, I've enjoyed a really good life. But it's been kind of an ordinary life, at least compared to the life that my 12-year-old self conceived of. Which just shows us that life often leads you in 2 places that you never thought you would end up, right? And for some of us, this takes on a new level of meaning. Maybe you, like me, are living a story that's not at all what you thought you'd be living. It's just different, and it's not bad. It's just a different version of life that you had planned for yourself. And then there are some of us who are sitting here today, and we have just kind of had an awakening recently where we've looked around at our lives and we realize that where we find ourselves is never where we thought we would be. And it's not just different, but it's a hard reality. I think of a friend of mine, an amazing guy who was describing what it was like after he was diagnosed with cancer. He's a guy who has been spending his career, he spent his whole career working with first responders, counseling them, helping give them tools to work through some of the stresses and traumas, even PTSD that they've experienced in their jobs. And so he's a guy who basically has spent his whole career giving people tools to handle really hard things in life. And then saw him not too long ago, and he was explaining to me what it was like when he got his own cancer diagnosis. And he started reading his prognosis and realizing how this changed his whole lifespan. And he said suddenly he found himself lying awake at night, couldn't sleep anymore. He's lying awake in bed next to his wife, the person who understands him better than anyone in the world, the person he feels most connected to, a person he's taken so much strength from, and yet he's lying next to her feeling completely alone, realizing she doesn't understand, there's nothing she can really do for him. And he says he's got all of these tools in life that are supposed to help you through hard things, and he realizes all of these tools are inadequate. He lies awake at night feeling alone and helpless. It's a place he never thought he would find himself. Or I think of another friend whose career has recently collapsed after a couple of decades of building into it, and now it's just all gone. Or I think of other friends who are trying to pick up the pieces of their lives after broken marriages. See, so many of us find ourselves sitting here today in a place where we just never thought we'd be here, and we're feeling lost, or we're feeling confused about where we are, or we're feeling stuck, or we're feeling tired. And that's where all of us find ourselves from time to time. That's not just you. But I also realize that there are some of us here today who we have dreamed our dreams and we have made our plans, and at least for now, we look back at the narrative that we constructed at 12 years old, and we look back at that and we're like, man, I've done all of it. I've achieved all of it and more. But it doesn't quite feel like we thought it would. And we can look at all that we have and all that we've accomplished, and yet it feels so empty. And you see, it's in these moments of awakening, these moments of reckoning, where suddenly we realize we're lost, we're off our path, it's not where we thought we would be. We try to find our way, we try to get back on track. It's often in these moments, these critical moments, that we make a huge mistake, an enormous mistake. And that mistake is we turn toward religion. Now, I'll explain in just a minute, but I'll stand by it. It's a huge mistake. Jesus actually talks this way in John chapter 10. If you want to open your Bibles right now, there's Bibles in the seat rack ahead of you. You can go to page 1075. If you're a second grader and you just got your new Bible, this is on page 1174 in your Bible. John chapter 10, let me tell you a little bit about John. So the Bible, kids, if you're not aware of this, the Bible is actually a collection of books. It's a book of books. There are 66 books that comprise our Bible, and 4 of those books in particular tell the story of Jesus' life. They talk about Jesus' life and ministry and teaching in great detail. We call those books Gospels, and John is one of those Gospels. So in the Gospel of John chapter 10, we see some of my personal favorite words of Jesus in all of the scriptures. Some of my favorite verses in all of the scriptures are John chapter 10. These are words that give me great hope in life when I'm feeling confused or lost. These are words that have been a driver for me, an influencer on me. They've been my personal mission statement for a long time. But in these words from John chapter 10, Jesus is also going to give us a warning when we find ourselves in search of direction. So again, those are the page numbers. Before we dive in, I just want to give you a little bit of context, because we're diving into the middle of a teaching of Jesus, in the middle of a kind of a speech that he's giving. And in this speech, he's in the middle of very figurative language, symbolic language. It's kind of a metaphor. Any of you going back to English class, can you remember what a metaphor is? It's different than a simile, right? A simile, how do you know it's a simile? Simile uses like or as, and a metaphor is also a comparison, but it actually says that a thing is the thing even when it's not. And so it's this analogy or symbolism. And the thing I want you to know before we dive in is that as Jesus begins talking here, he'll speak about himself in a few ways that we're gonna unpack. But one thing I want you to know that we are actually in this metaphor. And we are sheep. I mean, if you gotta be a sheep, might as well be a cute one, right? And I don't know if you know a lot about sheep. I certainly do not, but a couple things that I've discovered about sheep and maybe this is why Jesus compares us to sheep, why he refers to us as sheep in this metaphor, is for starters, sheep are very communal. They live in flocks or herds. They like to live life together with others. And they don't do well when they're isolated. When they find themselves separated from the flock or herd, it causes a lot of distress. They don't do well living separate. And I think this might be true of us. In fact, I think it's very true of us, that we are also meant to live life in community with other people. And lately in culture, we've run this experiment where we've stripped down the relationships in the community that we've lived in for generations, and we've gotten ourselves into these micro communities, nuclear families, and we've sort of lost connections. And I frankly don't think it's working out very well for us. I think a lot like sheep, we don't do well isolated. We're meant to live life with others, in community with others, which is part of what we're a part of here, even at Pathfinder. But one of the other things you'll learn about sheep, or you might already know about sheep, is that they do best, they like life best when they are out in the open pastures. Free to graze, free to roam, not penned in. They like their freedom, they like their autonomy, which is a lot like us, right? We love our freedom, we love our autonomy, especially in this country. If you're streaming from another place outside of our country, you know this about Americans. We love our freedom, we love our autonomy. But here's the risk of freedom and autonomy, and I think this is part of the reason Jesus compares us to sheep in this passage. Although we love it, with freedom always comes risk. With autonomy always comes danger. And so in this, Jesus is not only comparing us to sheep for any number of reasons, and I won't unpack all of them, but in this, Jesus is trying to help us understand a danger that's facing us as sheep. So he's gonna get into the metaphor, we are sheep. Maybe that's a compliment to you, maybe it isn't. Either way, let's look at what Jesus says, starting at verse 8, John chapter 10, verse 8. Jesus says, all who have come before me, he's a great religious teacher, he's a leader, he's a prophet, some people say. All who have come before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep, people like us, have not listened to them. And then he says this, he says, I am the gate. So we're the sheep, he's the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. They will come in and go out and find pasture. Jesus says, you are the sheep, I am the gate. Now, in our modern day, gates, that term is not exactly a positive term. I mean, a fair share of cults have picked up on this word and called themselves gates. So if you're now attending a religious worship experience, there are a few exceptions, and they use the word gate. You might want to look under the hood on that a little further. I mean, cults love gate as a name, and it's kind of creepy. Or in popular culture, gate has often been used, and it's increasingly used, to be synonymous with scandal, right? You go back to Watergate, or Pardongate, or more recently, Deflategate. Never forget, right? Never forget. By the way, the Patriots need to change their name. They're just making us all look bad. If this is what a patriot is, who wants to be that? But anyway, gate is kind of this word that means scandal, but here Jesus says, I am the gate, and he means it in a good way. What he means is he's the one through whom you pass in order to find peace and safety. If you're tired of life out in the open pasture and all of the dangers and always looking over your shoulder and looking behind your back, if you're worn out, if you're lost or confused, he's the one through whom you can find community and safety and refuge locked away inside of the sheep pen. If you just need a break or a place of refuge, Jesus says, I'm the one. You can come to me, and through me, I'll lead you to a better place. That's what he means when he says he's the gate. But he also uses that term in contrast of everyone else who came before him. He said, everyone who's come before me, who's tried to pretend to be the same thing, they are nothing but sheep, they're nothing but thieves and robbers, he says. Thieves and robbers dressed up like good guys. You know the drill. And if you don't, Kevin McAllister would be very disappointed in you. So he says, these other guys who look like good guys, but they're not there. They're not really good guys. They've actually come to steal and destroy from you. But he says, that's not me. I'm good. I came here to help you. I'm a good guy. And then he goes on and he finishes this metaphor in this way. He says, the thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. Be warned. But I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. Now, when Jesus talks about the thieves here, maybe lots of things can come to mind, things that steal, kill, and destroy. When you can think about disease, things like cancer, you can think about mental illness, maybe addiction. I know some of you have got that in your story and you know how it can steal, kill, and destroy. Or you can think about the violence in our society or oppression or injustice. Those all might rightly be referred to as thieves. But when Jesus is talking here in John chapter 10, when he's talking about the thief, he means a very specific thief, and he's referring to none other than the thief of religion. Now, what you might not know, and I'll explain this, what you might not know is that at the beginning of John 10, if you have your Bible open, you can see it, Jesus is speaking directly to the Pharisees. And the Pharisees are the leaders of the religious establishment. They embody the religion of their day. And Jesus, this is not a subtle, this is a very direct shot over the bow saying, you are nothing but thieves and you represent a religion that is all about stealing, killing, and destroying, which I know may sound a little over the top, right? But if we step back from it and we just think about history, think for a second about how many wars have been fought and how many lives have been lost in the name of religion. Or think about all that has been stolen from people in the name of religion. Think about lands that have been stolen from people so that others could build empires in the name of their kings and their gods. Or think even in modern sense, think about how many widows have had their pensions devoured by swindlers or televangelists who take everything that they have, who are then driving Rolls Royces and flying in private jets. Think about all that's been stolen from people in the name of religion. Or think about how many lives have been destroyed by the abuses of people even in religious authority. And we know some of those stories here even in our own city. Or even think about how most religion in the world, think about this, how most religion in the world is built on a similar premise. The premise is, if you make yourself miserable enough, if you deprive yourself enough in the here and now, then you'll earn the right to be able to call yourself good and holy and maybe get invited into a better life someday. Or if it still sounds too over the top, I want you to remember this, that the religion Jesus is speaking against in his day, and these religious leaders standing there who embody this religion, they are the ones who in a very short period of time will bring Jesus up on false charges. They will accuse him of a crime he did not commit. And they will drag him before the courts. They'll railroad him through just a sham of a court system, and they will get him sentenced to a horrible punishment, being beaten within an inch of his life. And they will execute that punishment on him. He will be beaten within an inch of his life, sentence served. But then here's what they do. They'll drag him to another court, a different court system, and they will accuse him of another crime, total double jeopardy. And they will have him sentenced again, this time to death by crucifixion. See, this isn't just rhetoric. Jesus is speaking to leaders who embody a religion that will steal and destroy and kill him. It's a warning, it's a statement, it's a prophecy about what is about to happen to him. But it's also a warning to any of us in those moments in life when we find ourselves lost or trying to find our way or confused or tired or in need of refuge. Don't go to religion, Jesus says, because religion is all concerned with power and authority and control and hierarchy. It's all about rules, and those things always steal and kill and destroy. Jesus says, don't go to religion. As tempting as it might seem, don't go to religion, Jesus says. Instead, Jesus says, come to me. There's a warning in what Jesus says in John 10, but there's also an invitation. The warning, the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. Don't look for refuge there. But here's the invitation. I have come that they might have life and have it to the full. Here at Pathfinder, we just believe this so completely, so deeply, so fully. that God came in flesh into the world, the reason Jesus came into the world is not because he needed anything from us. It's because he wanted great things for us. Jesus came because he wanted to bring us life. And not just any kind of life, but abundant life, life to the full, life to the nth power. And I know that hopefully it sounds good, but maybe it sounds confusing. And so Jesus goes on and he says, religion, it'll never give you that, but I can. And then he explains that this isn't just a concept, but he actually can help us find our way to this life that he came to bring. And he changes up the metaphor, he changes up the symbol just a little bit. We're still the sheep, but now instead of being the gate where people can come in and go out and find safety, he changes it up. And here's what he says. He says, I am the good shepherd, and the good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep. So when he sees the wolf coming, when predators come, he abandons the sheep and he runs away. Then the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it. The man runs away because he is a hired hand and he cares nothing for the sheep. In other words, he has no real ownership. But in contrast, Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me, just as God the Father knows me and I know the Father. And I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep that are not of the sheep pen. Jesus is speaking to a group of people. They're Jewish by culture and religion, and he's saying, hey, and my concern as a shepherd is to give life to more than just any specific group or religion or tribe. It's really to give life to all. And so he says, I have other sheep that are not of the sheep pen. I must bring them also. They too will listen to my voice. That's important. And there shall be one flock and one shepherd. Can we just acknowledge that although life to the full, abundant life, can we acknowledge that although it may sound really great, can we acknowledge that none of us really know the way? I mean, culture all the time is putting pictures in front of us and reality TV in front of us of people who are supposed to be living the life. And we look with admiration and envy at their lives sometimes, and then it never takes long, does it? Before you get to see behind the scenes, and you realize behind the scenes there are family problems and money problems and drug problems and all kinds of problems, and there's isolation and there's loneliness and there's deep soul sadness. I mean, our culture pretends it knows the way, and some of us buy in, but it's hardly ever true. Or we see advertisers, putting people in front of us, beautiful people with smiling faces who look so happy, and the message is just buy this and your life will be fuller. And we buy and we discover that we've got more stuff and our houses are fuller and our storage rooms are fuller and our garages are fuller. We can't even park our cars in them. But life hasn't gotten any fuller. See, here Jesus says that not only is there life to the full, but that he's the only one who knows the way to it. And again, I think this is what makes Jesus so different from all other so-called prophets or saviors, all other religions. See, most other religions, they'll promise you heaven someday, but they'll make your life a living hell in the here and now, trying to earn it. And Jesus, he reverses everything and he says, no, you don't understand. I want you to have life in the here and now. I want you to have abundance in the here and now. And I know what it looks like, and it looks different than you might think, and I know the way to it. But once you have this life, it's so full and it's so rich and it's so expansive and it's so complete that not even death can stop it. It goes on forever. See, he says it begins today and it goes on forever. Yes, it's about eternity, but it starts today, Jesus says. Now, here's what I know, that even if these claims of Jesus sound good to you, at this point, they're only that. They're claims. How do we know that any of this is credible? I mean, all kinds of people speak about eternity and the afterlife, and they speak about big things. And how do we know for certain that any of them are credible? I mean, how do you know until you get there when it's too late? It's convenient, isn't it? Yet here is what has helped me on my journey as I wrestle with some of these really big claims of Jesus. What's helped me is that Jesus is one who doesn't only make really big, lofty claims about the afterlife, but Jesus, throughout his life and ministry, again, you can read them in the Gospels, he makes a lot of other claims that I have found to be verifiable in the here and now. There are things that I can begin to experience in the here and now. Even in John chapter 10, I don't know if you saw it in that section we looked at, Jesus makes several other claims that you can begin to investigate in the here and now. One of them is that you are uniquely known. Jesus said, I know my sheep and my sheep know me. I know my sheep, Jesus says. And when he says that, he's not speaking in a generic sense, like I know people or I know human nature. What he really means is that he knows you personally, uniquely. He knows your fears. He knows the darkest moments of shame that you carry around with you. He knows your greatest dreams. He knows every curve and crook and fragment and every twist and turn of your shattered hopes and your broken dreams. He knows it all. He knows you. And I think some of us, we wonder, is there anyone in the world who really knows us as we are, the real us, not the us that we present? Does anyone really know us? And Jesus says, I know you. And one of the ways that Jesus is different, see, most religion, what it does is it says, here's the mold, and you need to conform and contort and distort yourself until you fit the mold so that you can be pleasing. And Jesus says, no, that's not the way I work. I know you uniquely. And what Jesus promises is that in knowing you uniquely, he comes into your life with all of the artistry and skill and craftsmanship of the best tailor that you can imagine. And he begins to bring life into your life in a way that is so distinct and unique. It's not one size fits all. He begins to show you where you are today, what life looks like in your journey. You can begin to discover that today. Not only does Jesus say that you're uniquely known, he also says you are loved with a limitless love. I know our culture has this romantic delusion of unconditional love. But I hope you realize that, humanly speaking, it's a myth. Right now, think of the person who you believe loves you most in all of the world. Chances are you also know not only that person's name or face, but you know exactly what line, if you crossed it, would cause them to say, I'm done, I'm out. And yet Jesus says, if you want to be loved, I think our desire, our need to be loved with an unconditional love, it's spot on. But if you desire to be loved with a limitless love, Jesus says, come to me. And this isn't just a claim that he makes, but he backs it up. Because even in John 10, he says in advance, I'm the good shepherd. I lay down my life for you. That means his love has no limits. He'll lay down his life for you. There are no limits to his love. There's no way that you can scare him away. In another place, Jesus says, he says, I'm a shepherd. And he said, and I will leave the 99 sheep behind to go and find the one lost sheep who's lost its way, who's broken ranks with the fold. I'll go out and find that. Now, I want you to know, you don't have to be a shepherd, but I want you to know that no shepherd in their right mind would ever do that. You would not leave your investment of 99 sheep vulnerable to prey while you go and find a sheep. You would say, that's the cost of doing business. It's too bad, but I'm staying here with the 99. No way would I risk the 99 for the sake of the one. And Jesus says, but I love you with a limitless love. So even when you're lost, when you've lost your way, when you've crossed all kinds of boundaries, when you're alone and isolated, when you've made everyone else in your life leave because of what you've done, Jesus says, I'm the one who will come and look for you. I will find you, I will seek you out, and I will bring you back into relationship with me because you are loved with a limitless love. And I'll tell you, it doesn't take long in journeying with Jesus to discover that this is true. That as you get to know him, As you get to experience him, you'll discover a love like you've never known. Finally, Jesus claims that he is speaking over you right now. Now, this one may sound weird, but he talked about it in John 10. He said, my sheep know my voice. Now, sheep are not known to be the most intelligent animals. They're kind of followers, but they know the voice of their shepherd. They're really, really attuned to it, and often that's all the shepherd needs to lead them. He doesn't drive them like you see in cattle farms, or he doesn't have to, coax them or scare them. It's just the sound of his voice, which often leads them to better pastures. And here's what you might not realize, but Jesus, he is speaking over you right now, and he's been speaking over you your entire life from the very beginning. And you might not have known that it was his voice. You might not have understood that connection, or maybe you've learned to tune him out, but he's been speaking over you. And everything good, everything beautiful that you've discovered about life, you know the stuff that's really good and really beautiful, the stuff that is lastingly good and beautiful and noble and valuable, the stuff that's really life-giving, that stuff, the reason you found it is because he's been speaking over you. And whether you realized it was him or not, his voice has led you to good things. See, religion is all over the map, but there's no one who talks this way, no one who talks like Jesus, saying you're uniquely known and you're loved with a limitless love, and I want to speak into your life in the here and now. And what that means for us is that if we want to find our way, the only thing we need to do is begin to listen to his voice. See, in this house, we are all Pathfinders. The reason we are called Pathfinder as a church is because, unlike other churches, we want to be clear that this is not the destination. Right? Going to church is not the goal. It's a means to an end. We gather here and important things happen here, but the end is that whole life that Jesus talked about. It is life to the full. It is abundant life now and forever. And yes, this is a place where you can find companionship on your journey, but this is not the destination. That's what makes us different. Lots of places will convince you that they're the destination. The goal is just to come to church, not us. Here at Pathfinder, secondly, another way we're different is that you will never hear me, you'll never hear Doug Moss saying that we have all the answers. I don't have all the answers. Now, I've been to school for a long time, and I have learned languages that no one even speaks anymore so that I can interpret the Bible. That's what I've been taught. And I know ancient theology, and I've seen theology unfold, and I've studied it, and I know the heart of God through scripture, and I can do some good stuff there. But the truth is, in spite of all of my education, all the years that I've had in school doing this, preparing me for this job, I don't yet personally know exactly what a full, abundant, whole life looks like for me. I'm still trying to figure it out. But I know that Jesus does, because he's the shepherd and I'm not. I'm just a hired hand, which means although I love you and I have a responsibility to serve and care and guide you, care for and guide you, here's what I can say, that if it happens like Jesus said, and the wolves descend, I'm out. And if there are a lot of wolves, I don't mind pushing one of you in the way to feed the wolves just so I can get away. Because I'm not that fast of a runner. I love you, just not that much. I'm only a hired hand. See, I don't have all the things figured out. I'm not the good shepherd. And that's why it's my job to teach you to do only what I'm doing. Not that I've got it all figured out, but to teach you how to listen to the voice of the good shepherd. How to hear him, how to trust him, how to believe in him. And then after you hear him, my job is to help you, encourage you to take your next step. Because in this house, it's not just about hearing or knowing, it's ultimately about following. In this house, another thing is clear. None of us have it figured out. That's why in this house, as Pathfinder, we say that we are imperfect people, and we're just trying to find our way to whole life, the whole life that Jesus is offering for us. And for us, we realize that when we know Jesus, we become a part of God's family, and that changes our identity, and our eternity is secure. But we also know that with every step we take following the Good Shepherd, there is more life available for us tomorrow with that next step than what we know today. And so if you are someone who is tracking along, if this makes sense to you, if somehow just kind of logically it's resonating, or even if it's not, if something in you as I've been talking is stirring in your heart or in your gut, if something is coming alive in you, then here's what I want to say to you. I want to say, you found your new home. You, just like us, are a Pathfinder, someone trying to find your way, following the voice of the Good Shepherd. Not sure what it all means yet, but wanting so badly to experience more life tomorrow than you even know today. And so if that's you, even though you have it all figured out, I want to be one of the first to say, welcome to the family. Welcome home. Let's keep taking steps together. We pray. Father in heaven, thank you for not just speaking at us from a cloud, not speaking at us conceptually or abstractly, but God, I thank you that you allowed your voice, your word, to become flesh, so that we could not only hear you, but so that we could see you, we could study you, we could watch your character, we could see if your claims are credible, if you are who you say you are. And so God, I thank you for the testimony of Jesus, the life that he lived, showing us that you truly are a good shepherd, showing us that you have life, that you're holding it out for us, and that you want more for us than we even want for ourselves. God, our Father, today I pray that you'd help us follow your voice, to hear it, to trust it, to believe it, and then to take a step to follow it. Through times of uncertainty, through times of fear, through times of chaos, through good times and bad times, knowing, truly believing that you are a good shepherd. And yes, you have heaven secure for us someday, but in the here and now, you're leading us on a journey. You're helping us find our way to a life that is beyond our expectation. Show us what it means that you are present for us, with us, guiding us to life. And then God, I pray you'd help us to follow. In the name of Jesus, amen. I invite you to stand up. We're gonna end our service today singing a song that I love. It's a song that I've said for the last year is kind of our anthem here at Pathfinder, at least it's my anthem. It's a song about what this journey means, what it means that we are all Pathfinders, the journey that we're called into. So if you're a singer, you'll catch on, I think, pretty quick and be able to sing along with it. Whoever you are, I invite you to focus on these words because I think this is what it's all about. Let's sing together.